Hi, folks. I hope you're well. I was just watching the introduction of the new episode of Real Time with Bill Mayer, and they had a bloke on who was talking about his book, as they always do. It's normally somebody's book. But he wrote a book talking about mobile phones and how mobile phones are not so benign and how they have nasty things in them. And how basically, children shouldn't be using things like Instagram until they're old enough to actually deal with it. But again, he was then saying, well, the problem is that as a parent, you have your 13-year-old coming to you saying, yeah, but all the other kids have a phone. I want a phone because all the other kids. And parents have to give in. That's what he said. And parents have to give in. No. Parents don't have to give in. Parents give in because it's easier. It's easier than dealing with the complaining from the kid or the asking from the kid. It's easier than dealing with the stroppiness and all that when you say no. Right? But when you give in to this, you are basically putting all that nastiness in the mind of your child. The cyberbullying, the pornography, the cyber pressure to do this. The bloke was saying that 40 parents went to, I think, Instagram and made a point about things to Instagram. And, the parents were parents who had lost kids that had died from things that had happened. And Bill Mayer said to him, was it suicide? He said, no. A lot of it was kids buying drugs, fentanyl and stuff like that. And Bill Mayer said, really? He went, yeah. There are platforms that kids can actually go and buy drugs from, and it's easy. The problem is when they try certain drugs, they die. Because the drugs aren't made for them. Their bodies aren't able to actually deal with it. And so they die. You give your child a phone, you allow your child a phone because of the pressure, then all you're doing is you're proving you care more about your life and having a bit of peace in your life rather than your child nagging than you do about your child. So own it. Own it. You don't give a crap about your kid. To all those 40 parents that went and complained, I would say, okay, why did you give your kid a phone? Right, you're responsible. You can't blame Instagram. If you allow your child to access Instagram, you are responsible, not Instagram. The bloke was saying Instagram has this thing to say you're only allowed to have an account on Instagram if you're 16 years old or if your parents agree that you can have it when you're younger. Right? So if you're 13, you can't just sign up to Instagram without your parents signing in, basically saying that they agree that you can have that. So I'm sorry, but the reality is parents are the ones to blame. It is always parents. Right now, we still have this situation in the world where, no, you can't ever say that a parent is a bad parent. But of those 40 that went to Instagram, most of them would have been bad parents. As I said, look, and again, I'll bring it up as it's a bloody good case. The mother of Jamie Bolger left her child outside, right? Or at the front of the shop, basically the front of the shop, so she could go in and not have to drag him around or deal with him, but she could do a little bit of shopping, right? He was lured away by two boys. He would never have been lured away if she had him. She was to blame. If she had been doing her job, there's no way, shape, or form those boys could have taken him down to the railway track and thrown stones at him until he died. With that boy crying for his mother. Do I feel sorry for the mother? No. 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 She's had all the sympathy over all these years. Do I feel sorry for her? No. 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 I feel sorry for the kid. For that poor little boy who was on his own with these older boys throwing rocks at his head while his mother was in a fucking shop taking care of herself. I don't care less about the mother in any way, shape, or form. I hope at some point in time she's able to forgive herself. But the reality is, we live in a world which basically says she's a victim. No, she's not. Her child was the victim. She was never the victim. She was the one responsible for the child, and she took her eye off the ball. Big time. When she should have been responsible, she wasn't. She put her child in a position where he could be taken. That's the reality. Same as that one where you had the two parents in Portugal and they left their kids in the room on their own, and went out to have a meal with their friends. Supposedly, one of the daughters, was then taken. Right? Again, were those parents charged? Nope, they should have been. Those children and that girl were abandoned by the parents so they could go and have a lovely meal. Do I feel for the parents? No, I don't. No, I don't. Not in any way, shape, or form. I do not feel for the parents because there is parental responsibility, or there bloody well should be. But right now in the world, there isn't. Parental responsibility, that's something that has to come back. And again, yeah, for the first couple of parents that it comes back to and they're held accountable, it will seem unfair. Of course it will. Yeah, why us? Why you start with us? Because we've got to start somewhere. But parents have to be responsible for their kids, and they have to realise that when something happens, you are to blame. You are to blame. I understand people will say, well, no, we tell them they're not to blame to make it easier, but they are. They are to blame. You put something like a mobile phone, get back to that point. You put something like a mobile phone in the hands of your child with everything that's on there, all the gambling, all the pornography, all the hate. And you think that a little mind, a very young mind, will be able to deal with that? Adults can't deal with that. But you do it because it makes your life easier. Because you don't want to seem unfair to say to your child no when other parents weren't saying no. And when your child is dead because of suicide or because of some drug overdose, because they've taken fentanyl when they bloody shouldn't be able to buy it, but they're able to buy it because you let them have a bloody phone, understand, it started with you. As a parent, it started with you. If you had done your bloody job, there's no way, shape, or form your child would be dead. Not that way. Now, if you're in a car and there's a car accident and another driver is not paying attention and they hit your car and your child dies that way, that ain't your fault. That is not your fault. But if you give your child the equivalent of dynamite, which is a smartphone now with everything that's bloody well on it, and they light it, that's on you. And yes, I don't feel sorry for the parents. The parents are being treated as victims. They were never victims. They were the ones who made their child a victim. Because they did. Now, that may seem harsh, but it's truth. So there you go. You take care. God bless. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.